Uh, so, how you doing? Great to see you again. It's been a while. Notice you're wearing the same outfit. That's kind of weird.
Yeah, it is. So, I'm getting in touch with my interest in wanting to take care of Alex. So I'm seeing Alex at a time when he's more stressed than I think I've ever experienced. Not because of what is going on in here. I think I've seen you stressed when we've talked about some big things.
Yes.
But the stress happened today when I walked through the door, and you were like noticeably preoccupied, noticeably in a different emotional state.
Yeah.
So, and when we were off camera and we weren't shooting or whatever, you talked about, just got a lot of stuff and a lot of stuff going on. And so for me, I'm thinking, let's cancel this and let's go and you go and do what you need to do. Like, we're talking about your mental health here. And your response was?
I said, no, Dr. Steve, that is a horrible idea.
Right. Because
for me, it's like,
a treat to be with me is what you said, I think.
It's not what I said. This is a serious podcast, and you're bringing these jokes in here.
In therapy, I would say that same thing.
Yeah. For me, we talk about therapeutic moments. It's helpful for me to be like, here's what I'm thinking, here's what I'm feeling. And for a therapist, AKA Dr. Steve, to be like, dude, that sucks. I hear you. For me, and I don't worry about the show when I'm feeling like this, because to me, this is exactly what therapy is. It's going in a room and being like, here's what I'm thinking, here's what I'm feeling. It doesn't have a through line. It doesn't all make sense. It's not like segmented. It's just raw sort of emotion. I feel stressed. I feel anxious. I feel, I know everything's fine, but my body is telling me that I'm in danger. And I feel like I'm a couple of emails or phone calls away from just like going off for a carton of cigs and never, or what is the old saying? It's like I'm going out for milk. I make that joke with Haley all the time. When I'm really stressed, I'll be like, Haley, I'm going to grab milk. And she'll be like, no, you can't.
It used to be a thing.
Yeah, which I don't want to make light of that, but okay, because that's a real thing. But yeah, I mean, yeah, Dr. Steve asked me, we weren't filming. He's like, well, I worried the last episode was kind of all over the place. And again, like, that's therapy. That's sometimes therapy for me. Sometimes I'll walk in and, I don't have anything to say, but I know I don't feel good. And I just need to talk about that. I need to acknowledge that. And I need someone to say, hey, yeah, that sucks. I hear it. You're going to be okay. Yeah.
So, I mean, one of my philosophies about therapy has always been that it's your job to fire me, right? Like it's your job, and I don't think you see that. I don't think you see it the same way.
No, I don't.
Because for me, my interest would have been to say, hey, let's not do this therapy thing, regardless of whether it's a podcast.
Yeah.
My interest was, you look like you have a lot on your plate that you need to get to that doesn't include sitting down for a half hour to talk to some guy. But you're saying, no, that's what I want. And you have. It's interesting because we talked a couple times ago about being a person of faith, right? You have enough faith in this process.
Yeah.
It may not be a religious oriented faith, but you have enough faith in this process that you say, I'm going to do this because I believe that this process, regardless of what it brings, is going to ultimately bring me some relief and understanding.
Beyond that too, it's like I don't trust myself to take care of myself outside, a big part of it is just feeling isolated and lonely and wanting to have someone to talk to about this.
Yeah.
And not be weirded out by it, to not respond with some like Minnesotan trope of like, oh, that's, let's talk about the weather, I just want to be heard and seen in moments like this.
Yeah.
So when I hear, just you take 30 minutes to relax, it's like, I'm not going to be relaxed. I'm just going to be sitting by myself, ruminating, thinking,
But when we're done with this, will you not be ruminating and thinking?
I think that's the trick for me, is figuring out what I can express that I've been trying to express to a person.
Yeah.
There's a release for me there.
Yeah.
And I do feel better because I get to get it out of my brain. It's sort of like, better out than in sort of a philosophy.
Shrek.
Yeah. Yeah. Better out than in. Does he say that after he farts? Or after he burps, maybe?
After Fiona burps, I think.
Yeah, okay.
So my thought, once again, going back to your job to fire me,
Do you keep bringing this up? Is this your way of being like, hey, Alex, can you let me go?
No. Like I keep thinking that there is a difference between doing this, having these conversations with me or George or EMDR lady, and having them with your dad, having them with your mom, having them with Haley, having them with your brother.
Yeah.
Those, like in some ways, I think that therapy can replicate or can be a proving ground or a testing ground for conversations you need to have with other people besides this person who is temporary in your life. I look at myself as temporary in your life.
Yep. Yeah. I hear that. It's kind of hard for me to hear that because it makes me acknowledge the fact that a lot of my pain and my hurt stems from not having those kinds of relationships with my family. I do not feel as though I can go to anyone with these thoughts, feelings.
But you haven't gone to them with these thoughts and feelings.
I have in the past, yes. And I know I've experienced the experience of doing that. And it's tough. It's frustrating. It's hard.
Because they're not met with
it's
understanding.
It's met. You know what it's met with?
You talked about being seen, being heard.
Yeah, it's met with mastery. Here's how you fix it.
Right, and then how do you meet that with them?
I don't want to. I'm smart enough to know how to fix it. I just need someone to listen and tell me that it's going to be okay.
Okay, so when you get that mastery pushback from that list of people, can you say that I don't need you to master? I don't need solutions. I just want. You're somebody who I care about. You're somebody who I want to know about me, and you have done that.
Yep, and the response is usually if you don't want any help, why you bring this to my attention, kind of a thing, because they probably never got it either. But who knows? But yeah, I exist sort of in this vacuum of like anything that's wrong. It's not about the process of feeling it or acknowledging it. It's about the process of fixing it as quickly as possible. So it's always met with rational solutions. And it's like, that's the last thing I want, Just want someone to be like, yep, I've actually experienced, like in this instance, Dr. Steve, if you were to be like, I've felt exactly like how you feel now, you're an awesome dude, it's going to be okay. I would feel better. Not to like, so why don't you go ahead?
I should do that. Alex, I have felt the same thing exactly to a T.
Okay, yep.
You will overcome.
Yeah, okay, great. Thanks. That's it. We're good. Yeah, but I hear what you're saying. And like, dude, it's tough to hear that because it makes you've basically just caused me to take 13 years of however many years of therapy and look at it like I was just trying to find a family. Like I was just trying to find someone who could listen, encourage, as opposed to.
That's maddening if you're hearing me say that, right? Like if I was you, I would be upset.
Yeah, I mean, I was upset, but at the same time, there's a voice that's like, hey, dude, there's something here.
Yeah.
There's something here to think about. Yeah, Dr. Steve's kind of a dick for bringing it up, but also...
You're onto something.
There's something here.
A lot of people in the world would think that you're onto something when you call me a dick. So, you're in good company.
But, I mean, it would be interesting. I wish I could, like, sit in a room with 50 people who see therapists and ask them, like, do you feel like you're seeking some sort of closeness that you didn't get in your upbringing? Like, did we talk about like stable, like attachment theory?
We have.
Yeah, that's where my mind goes to. Because man, I don't want to be the guy that's like, hey, Dr. Steve, I want you to be my mom and my dad. Like that's what the critical thought in my head is like. Well, and I got the feeling that you were saying, dude, I'm not your dad, I'm not your mom,
Oh, no, I'm not, obviously not, but I'm not, that's not the message I'm trying to send. Like for those 50 people you talked about, what I want to know, like I want to push back. Have you tried this with your family? Yeah. You're saying, yes, you've tried this with your family. You've tried this with with people. And I'm not going to deny that there's something about having another human being acknowledge your struggle, your pain, your existence. Like there's like in I'm thinking of the Shoah Foundation, and are you familiar with that? I think
No.
it's called the Shoah Foundation. Who's the big director? He's done all the big movies.
Steven Spielberg.
Yes.
Actually?
So Spielberg, yeah.
Okay.
Spielberg did Schindler's List.
Yeah.
And I think around that same time he began or created a foundation, someone please correct me if I'm wrong, called the Shoah Foundation, was about testifying about the Holocaust and the atrocities of the Holocaust and telling the story of this, that there's healing in telling the story of the trauma. There's healing in sharing with other people the humanity, how inhumane that was, and there's humanity in sharing that inhumanity.
Yeah.
And that so Spielberg's commitment to funding and being a part of this foundation to get these stories and collect these stories about the atrocities of the Holocaust. So I think one of the things that therapy does is it provides a forum for people to say, here are the challenges that I've been experiencing, and to sit with another human being and the other human being to be able to say,
yeah,
that sucks. Like that.
Mm-hmm.
How did you do that? Like, how did you survive Auschwitz, your own Auschwitz?
Yeah.
So I really hear what you're saying, and I need to reevaluate or rethink or entertain the possibility that your job is not to fire me.
Yeah.
At a global scale, you as a client, me as a therapist,
Yeah.
or clients and therapists, not you and me specifically.
And I want to make it abundantly clear that, the comparison of the inhumanity of
The
the
Holocaust.
Holocaust to what I'm experiencing there's a very, 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 very...
I used it as a very loose analogy.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not suggesting
Yeah,
the
because the last thing I want
correlation.
is someone to be commenting, what was that one comment I got? Stop being soft or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which people can comment that.
So
That
the big
doesn't-
takeaway with that comparison, the big takeaway is sitting with another person.
Yeah.
And acknowledging, seeing, hearing, understanding them.
And sometimes I feel embarrassed and ashamed that I have that need, and that I
What if
sometimes...
that's a universal need? Like, what if that's a
Yeah.
human need?
Well, you
does
tell me. Sometimes I feel like you sort of feel like I shouldn't have that need. Is that accurate?
No, because I don't believe that. I don't
Yeah.
believe that about you as a human being. I think, but the question is,
What are you going to do about it?
no, are there other places to get it besides
Yeah.
here?
Yep.
So yeah,
That would be the goal.
You
for
have
sure.
George, right? You've got me. You've got EMDR.
Yeah, but
there are
it
these-
shouldn't be just trained professionals.
I don't know if it should or shouldn't. I'm not willing to go there, but
It's something worth thinking about.
I want to push you in that direction.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, because I mean, where my mind goes now is like, are you just sort of looking for substitutes? I'm seeing George. I see an EMDR lady. Am I just buying time as opposed to trying to not solve? I don't want to use that word, but could I renew my effort to find therapeutic moments outside
In
of
other places.
Yeah. Which I do. And maybe I should focus more on working out, running, going for a run. That's therapeutic for me. It's meditative. I love doing it. What's that face?
I think it's a yes and. It's a both and, right?
Yeah.
Because I think you are also oriented. You're a people person. You're an extrovert.
Yeah.
That's my sense.
It's funny.
And so
that's a different
Right?
subject.
So I think it needs to be done with people.
Yeah.
I don't think you just jogging.
It's just tough
It's not
because
gonna
when
do
I
it.
do it with people, I'm very sensitive to, I'm looking to see how they're going to respond. When I open up with you, I'm like, okay, what's he saying? What's his body language? Like I wish I could be around people and express myself and not need them to respond and affirm.
You do in hockey.
Yeah, that's true.
So there is this domain where you show up and you're physically involved, and there's
Yeah.
relationships, right? There's
Yeah.
people, because you've been in this league for a while.
Mm-hmm.
People that you know, people that you, I would say, probably care about to some degree.
Yeah, to some degree.
It's a
To any of you
it's a
guys
beer league.
listening. Yeah. I'm going to keep you in check here to some degree. No.
Keep you in check. I like that. A little
Okay.
hockey
I missed
humor.
that pun. It was so
Yeah,
good. I
yeah.
missed it. All right.
Yeah.
But yes, there are moments where, yeah, it's like I need more stimulus to, and this reminds me of EMDR, my experience with it. What I liked about it was you hear the noise,
Yeah.
you feel the buzzes, and then there's a lot to keep track of, and it's just enough to sort of like calm me down a little bit.
That there's enough to track that you're.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
It takes the edge off, right?
Uh-huh.
Because I told this to a therapist. I love driving. I love road trips. And it was reminiscent to the feeling I get when I'm on road trips, because when I'm driving down I-75 doing 85, 90 miles an hour, and there's semi trucks passing me and stuff like that, there's a certain element of danger. It's just enough to sort of allow my brain to calm down, to be like, okay, we can focus on this. What else is going on? And I just start to daydream and think about stuff and process things.
Yeah.
Because there's this base level of, stimulus. And the more, that's why I love go-kart racing. I love racing. I love going fast.
Yeah.
I love environments where I don't have enough time to think. That's why I love hockey. There's so much going on. I have to figure out how to not fall. I have to stick handle. Someone could some 6'3", 300-pound guy could run me out. There's a lot of stimulus there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I get the same thing from sharing my inner thoughts on the internet, I guess, too. I don't know. I think about that sometimes. Like, there's something also rewarding about knowing that if I can, express this and share this, it's not so scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are you feeling right now?
I don't know. I was just thinking about, like, there's a part of me that really I sometimes struggle with, like, I have so much energy, whether it's an emotion or thoughts.
Yeah.
And it's hard for me to sit and contain them sometimes. And it's like when I'm stressed out, I'm thinking, like, I'm running through visuals in my head. It's like, is it that dog that just needs to go outside? It's like, you want to go for a walk? Yeah. And do I just need to let myself and just run around for 10 minutes? I remember when I was a kid, if I was like going really crazy, my parents would be like, just go run outside. And I literally would just like run around and I'd be feeling great again. I don't know.
That's interesting because, we've talked at times about this thing called dissociation, and you've been talking to a therapist about this, diagnosis of being of dissociation, right?
Yeah.
And to me, the other stuff you're talking about is association. Like, you're associated. Like when you're driving down I-75 and you're looking at the dials and you're looking at the road and there's a truck and you're like, all these things you have to be really focused on and associated with.
Yeah.
Like, you have to dial into, and dissociation seems to me like being separate and apart from. And what it sounds like to me is that you get energized by being associated. This is an association. You and me here. That's a connection thing. And driving the car to me is an association thing. It's not tuning out, it's tuning into.
Mm-hmm.
And that calms you down. And so it's fascinating to me that one of the things that you've talked about as being this thing since you were 6 years old, if I remember correctly, 6 or 10?
Let's call it 8. 8 or 10.
Look at that. Let's split the difference.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just a practical guy.
It was dissociation, was being apart from, separate from.
That is fast. I hadn't considered that.
Well, that's because
You're a genius. Yeah. You wrote a book. Woo!
It's like a big middle finger to me right there, Alex.
No, it's true. I definitely, that is a interesting, not dichotomy, but what's the other word? Those two things, you'd think they'd be polar opposing forces. You'd think they're two contradictory things. Dissociation, but also I receive I feel like I achieve zen, if you will, or like calmness from being very
Stimulated.
focused on something, engulfed in something.
Yeah.
That is
like hockey.
Yeah, like hockey or driving, racing, skydiving.
Do you do a lot of that?
Did I tell you the time I went skydiving over the pyramids of Giza?
It sounds like a J. Peterman catalog.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know what a J. Peterman catalog is?
No, I just assume it's something cool. What is J. Peterman?
In the 90s, there was a catalog, and Seinfeld lampooned it. Elaine wrote for the J. Peterman catalog. He had these exquisite adventures and things like that, and he often found clothing at these adventures and would develop a piece of article of clothing. So,
was the joke being that like
skydiving over the pyramids of Giza?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and I think about that in terms of like that was probably the most stimulated my brain's ever been in a while. Yep. I do enjoy
a good pyramid.
Okay. No one gets to see it. Seeing it from the side is seeing it from above. That's the great view. Yeah. What are your thoughts, generally speaking, on the condition of ADD? Because I asked, what did you just do an eyebrow thing?
I did.
Why?
Because you were looking at me.
Yeah. Because I think about that sometimes. Like, is there a correlation between my preference for stimulus and sort of feeling uncomfortable when I don't have it?
Probably.
I grew up in an environment where that was not considered to be a legitimate. It was like one of those that's bad parenting or something. That's what my parents would say. It's not like
bad parenting of what?
If a kid had ADD, they just don't believe it's a real thing.
Yeah. Well, I would differ from what your parents said. If your parents are still holding that attitude or belief.
I don't know. I haven't asked them.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we probably over-medicate with ADD.
That's what was their concern.
One of the classic examples is a brother-in-law, a great guy who was going into business, hated business, studied business or something like that at university, went into business and just hated it. Hated reading books. He's a pilot now for one of the big airlines, and get into a cockpit where there's hundreds of dials and readouts, and he's so laser focused.
Yep.
Every 5 seconds, he's got to check in. So it's like that's just a different way of processing information, and it doesn't always line up with our school system,
our society,
right? So there's a book that I just was talking to friends about called "Boys Adrift," or "Adrift," something like that, talking about the educational system, how it's really set up to cater to the strengths of women.
Mm-hmm. Oh, interesting.
That there are a lot of young boys who are left behind in our public school systems because it's not catered to boys with certain kinds of energies and
do you think that would be, not to interrupt you, but do you think that would be due to the fact that education's typically staffed by predominantly females, or is that not true?
Oh, I don't know. There may be some truth to that. I don't know if it's that
That's
way at all levels.
Yeah.
But they contrast educational systems here in the U.S. where we've gotten rid of recess and physical education.
I didn't know that.
Pared those down.
Wow.
There are some places that still do that, and some places intentionally trying to get that in. And they talked about the difference, like in Finland, for example, or the Scandinavia, where they don't start school until you're 7, and there's a whole part of the day which is outdoors.
Yeah,
they want you to get your hands in the dirt and in the snow and be outside. And there are so when you only focus on STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, you cater to a certain population that is oriented towards STEM. You don't raise a population of people that are oriented towards the arts and other things.
Yeah. Man, can't imagine a world without recess. Woof. Yeah, well, it's what I love about directing. I get the same stimulus because when I'm directing, I have to, everybody's problem is my problem. So like if the light's
Yeah.
not working, you know, the gaffer comes to me, right? If an actor is, you know, I have to deal with it. If the client's upset, I have to deal with that. And I love the idea. I love the challenge of like 50 problems going on at the same time and being like, all right, I have to completely different ones. I have to provide therapy to this actor and get them feeling comfortable.
It's a symphony.
And then I have to deal with this technical problem. I have to deal with this logistic problem, you know?
It's like an
Yeah.
like an orchestra. You're like directing
Correct,
an
yeah.
orchestra.
Different
right?
instruments, you know? Trombones over there, tromboning. And the violin, yeah.
Yeah, and a friend of mine once described it like if you can get that orchestra to play like a single instrument, that's your job.
Mm-hmm.
Take all these divergent things
Achieve harmony.
and give them one voice.
Yeah. That part's cool. I love that.
Not everybody can do that.
Yeah, well, it's super overwhelming when you have like, and I, you know, cool stories, young. We haven't gotten to the big leagues yet. You know, I'm dealing with productions where there's like maybe 10, 15 people.
Yeah.
When you have 15 people and everyone, when something goes wrong, like they look at you, there's real pressure there.
Yeah.
Because if you don't figure it out, it doesn't, like, you don't pass the buck to anyone. The buck gets passed to you and that's it.
But you're also energized by that.
Correct.
So there's a level of stress and there's probably a commensurate payoff with
It's
how
100%.
Yeah.
And afterwards, I'm exhausted and I need to recover. But I've been juggling too many things. You know, I'm juggling 3 of those.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, I haven't been able to sleep. But I love doing it for that very reason.
But so maybe what you take out of this is I can handle 2 of these projects
Yeah.
at a time.
Yeah.
I can't, you know, like I don't know how many people like I don't know how Hollywood directors do it. Not that I want to pattern my life after anybody in Hollywood, but
What are you talking about, Dr. Steve? They're the best.
but can you just work on one
Yeah.
picture at a time? Does Spielberg just take on one thing at a time?
They traditionally, I mean, feature films, much different beast. Yeah, that's what they do. Some do once every 2 years, 3 years.
Yeah.
That's also due to the fact that development, I don't think people realize how long it takes a film to get developed. Like the script will be written and then sometimes 6 years later is when they start shooting it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you know, in the last session, there was a part of me that was like, hey, maybe this is my body saying,
Right.
this is the limit. You've
Right.
hit it. And just so you know, if you try to break past it, this is what's going to happen. That kind of bums me out, right? Because I'd like to think I can do whatever I want, you know, and just
But
push myself to.
I look at it as, you know, if you're beginning in your career, I don't know if you would say you're beginning, probably not beginning, but if you're in your adolescence of your career or whatever, however you look at it, this is a good thing to know about because then I think you can set your price point, your market value. Like when I take on 3 projects, I'm not good.
Mm-hmm.
When I take on 2, you get the best of me.
Yep.
And so that's why I'm priced the way I am, or that's why I set these limits because I've learned this by taking 3 or more scripts or whatever.
And I also, on top of that, I worry about the future in terms of like, hey, when I have kids, like, how do you know, if I'm trying to juggle 3 projects now and I can come home and Haley and I can take a nap on a Sunday, you know, for 2 hours if we want to. That's going to drastically change when I have 3 little monsters running around.
Yeah. Talk about sleep deprivation.
Yeah. Yep. So, like, just to return to sort of the beginning of this session, everything that we've just sort of talked about, like, I feel better now.
Yeah.
And to me, this represents therapy for me. This is how therapy helps me.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? Would you agree? Would you say?
Well, I'm not going to disagree with you if you say this is how this is what works for you.
I know, but I'd be curious. Like, is the therapy is Alex therapy different from regular therapy? I know I can't put you in that position either.
I don't think so. Well, maybe the better question is what am I thinking about our time together today? You know, like what?
Yeah.
Like sometimes I'll ask people at the end of a session, well, what are you taking with you? Like, what did you get out of today? And so you just delivered yours.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably fair to say, what am I taking from it?
Yep.
I think that this, you know, like we shoot 2 shows back to back. And I think this conversation is very much what like an hour of therapy or, you know, more than 2 sessions, you know, like putting these 2 sessions would equal kind of an hour of therapy, right? Kind of meandered a little bit, got some background on it, and then there was a challenge.
Yeah.
The challenge about maybe you shouldn't be meeting, and maybe we, and then we talked about that off air, and then we brought that into this room. And I think you got up, you pushed back, right? Because I think you heard me say you're trying to replace, like you're trying to.
Yeah.
I'm your rent-a-friend. George is your rent-a-friend, your rent-a-brother or whatever.
That's true. Yeah.
And you pushed back, and we had real exchange. And to me, to hear you say that was therapeutic, you had a real honest exchange with another human being, which is the validating part.
Yeah. And also, I take away too, I feel more comfortable knowing that everything, all the stress I'm experiencing right now is most likely, simply put, my body's way of saying, hey, here are the limits.
These are limits. Yeah.
And it's not there's no judgment, or there's no, like, it's not an indication that something's wrong or there's something.
Or you're lacking, right?
Yeah.
You're lacking. There's a deficit. Not
It's just a simple fact of Alex's life. Hey, here's our wall. If you want to extend it, maybe we can work together to find some. Like, you got to be exercising daily. You have to be eating right. You have to be sleeping right.
Yeah,
but
here's the price of that. Here's
exactly.
the price. You're not going to get as good a sleep. You're going to start feeling jaw pain. You're going to TMJ at yourself, whatever.
Yep. And that's a huge takeaway for me, because I had been stuck in this room, this area of, well, this is a deficiency. I'm doing something wrong. I'm not handling this the right way. This shouldn't be happening. Is the voice that had been running through my head, and that's the real kicker. That's the one that wears you down. That's the one that exhausts you, because then you feel like what you're experiencing is your fault. So you're like, well, how do I fix it? I don't know how to fix it.
But that's also an Alex trait, right? I think you're more inclined to look at, and maybe it's a human trait, but you specifically, I think, are more inclined to look at yourself from that deficit. Like, I should be able to handle this, and I'm not. So what's wrong with me? Yeah. Instead of, okay, I'm learning something here about myself.
Yeah.
Like, maybe 3 projects is more than I can take on.
Yep. And it makes me feel more relaxed. I feel like I'm on friendlier terms with myself now. Like
after these conversations,
me and myself, we see each other a little bit better now.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I wasn't doing this to piss you off, or I was just, this is how I am. This is how my body. This is how the Alex body is. It's like, it's okay. I respect that.
Yeah.
You can't do everything.
That's good stuff.
So yeah, maybe this is a good place to.
It's a great place to wrap
up. Well, I've been thinking about it, and I think I'm going to fire you, Dr. Steve. So
for today.
But thanks for your time, and to everyone else out there, I hope you're having a blast and stay happy. All right.